Yeah, hi folks. Now, as you all know, Chris Hipkins and Jacinda Ardern have gotten New Zealand into bed with BlackRock, which is a bad move. No different than getting us into bed with the UN, the WHO and WEF. In fact, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, is on the WEF's Board of Trustees.
Last week I spoke to an audience of business directors here in Auckland about why climate action is good for their bottom line as well as good for our climate. As a country that relies heavily on our clean green brand to underpin our export value, we need to work hard to maintain our competitive advantage. Increasingly, consumers and companies around the world and the companies our exporters supply to are making good climate practices a condition for doing businesses. Our recent free trade deal with the European Union has major climate obligations built into it.
And that should never have happened. Jacinda Ardern signed away our sovereign right to govern our country the way we want.
Decreasing our carbon emissions is no longer a nice to have, but an essential part of doing global business. We've got a great story to tell as a country, but we can't take that for granted. I've heard some argue that New Zealand should be a fast follower when it comes to climate action. That as a country that produces less than 1% of global emissions, we have no role in being at the front of the pack. I could not disagree more with that assessment. The announcement we're here for today proves that big economic opportunities for New Zealand lie in our climate leadership.
Yes, your leadership to hell. Why won't you consider an electric car? They cost too much, 63%. Ford in America is losing $60,000 on every one of these they make. Ford expects to lose $4.5 billion on electric vehicles this year. And who controls the solar panel supply chain? China controls everything.
I'm proud of my government's ambition on climate, and I'm proud of the actions that we've taken so far to date. We passed the Zero Carbon Act, enshrining into law our goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2050. We've made electric cars more affordable
by paying people to buy them.
And we're experiencing one of the highest uptakes of electric vehicles anywhere in the world. We've established a green investment fund, and we've boosted its pool of capital by $300 million in the most recent government budget. We banned offshore oil and gas exploration, sending a clear market signal that future electricity generation investment needs to be in the renewable energies area so that we can hit our target of 100% renewable electricity by 2030. Just yesterday I announced plans to fast-track solar and wind generation projects that could produce more power than the Clyde Dam in a fraction of the time, with a fraction of the cost, and of course the impact on the environment is less from those initiatives as well.
Around the world, in some of the most beautiful places, they're appearing. In the green rolling coastal hills, Victoria's Gippsland, along the blustery western ridgelines of Britain and the storm-tossed cliff tops of northwest Tasmania, towering turbines are sprouting everywhere. And according to many environmentalists, they are far from clean and green.
Why are you importing these bits and pieces, sticking them up in the air and looking at wonderful phallic symbol? It's green. It's not green at all. There is nothing green about this landscape, and there's nothing green about these weapons of mass destruction, because basically that's what they are.
British environmentalist Professor David Bellamy once campaigned to save the Franklin River. Now he's back in Australia, this time tilting at windmills.
Look, there is a perceived energy crisis. Here is something perceptible, something concrete.
Something perceptible, but something contrary to common sense.
This wind farm at Tura in Victoria's South Gippsland is the first of many planned for this lovely coastline. When the wind's blowing, and only when the wind's blowing, these 12 turbines can provide electricity for up to 9,000 homes. But according to Professor Bellamy, they're a blight on the landscape.
Because they do chop up birds, because they do spook bats, because they do reduce the value of property, and they screw up the tourist industry. That's what really gets up my nose. But the thing, they don't work. They don't produce enough electricity to make it worthwhile to stuff the landscape and stuff people's lives.
So it's a mix of ambition, courage and work that we've done to date that leads us to today's announcement. I'm pleased to announce that the government has worked with BlackRock over the recent months to launch a first of its kind $2 billion climate infrastructure fund.
So that's why Jacinda went to BlackRock's head office.
For Ardern, New York was meant to be about trade and tourists. After her COVID nightmare back home this morning, she woke up finally here in the city that never sleeps, here to buddy up to the States and open more doors to trade.
Prime Minister, how's your day going? Oh, it's busy but fantastic.
Like the doors to $10 trillion investment firm BlackRock.
Yes, she went there to meet her totalitarian buddy, Larry Fink.
I want to ask you for a big picture question to start off with. If you look around the world, what do we see, right? Global wave of social unrest. Democratization of information, it plays a big role in that. Twitter, Facebook, $100 oil, the deepening deficit, the states moving to fight public employee unions, imbalances, currency issues, the lingering crisis in Europe. What does it all add up to?
Confusion. Uncertainty. Markets don't like uncertainty. Markets like actually totalitarian governments where you have...
Now, Larry Fink is exactly the same as these guys.
Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again. So we must use all the levers we have at our disposal, knowing that each and every one of us has a vital role to play.
The Great Reset is a welcome recognition that this human tragedy must be a wake-up call. It is imperative that we reimagine, rebuild, redesign, reinvigorate and rebalance our world. Rebalancing investment, harnessing science and technology, and advancing the transition to net zero emissions, all elements of the Great Reset, are fundamental to building the future we need.
And that last one was the clown Guterres, who was at the Climate Ambition Summit, telling us the world is going to cook by 3.5 degrees or something by the end of the century. Yeah, right. This Great Reset is as serious and as dangerous a threat to our prosperity, to your prosperity and your freedom, as we have faced in decades. With these powerful bodies, including the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and even Prince Charles boasting that within a few short years, yes, their words, you will own nothing and you will be happy.
Now, folks, you might find this interesting.
Well, okay, so we're still in Fremantle. Who do we have here?
Alex Nicol.
Alex, now you used to work for the federal government.
I did, yeah, for 7 years.
Doing what?
I was policy advisor for a Liberal Party senator.
Okay. And you were saying about you working with the windmills?
Yeah, so the area that I was working in was renewable energy. And basically, it was my job to uncover a lot of the stuff that was going on with the Renewable Energy Act, which was put in 2002 under the Howard government. So that was the Liberal Party put the act in place, and I was looking at the mess that it had created. And what a lot of people don't understand is that the Renewable Energy Act creates a subsidy environment where if you build wind turbines, you're paid between $600,000 and $900,000 per turbine per year as a subsidy alone.
Well, if it's on your property.
No. So what happens is the wind company comes in and leases, they pay a lease to the farmer to build the wind turbines, and that in effect makes sure that the farmer is still liable for the turbine.
Okay.
And they pay a lease of $12,000 a year, usually, and the company gets paid between $600,000 and $900,000 per turbine per year.
So they pay $12,000 to the farmer, but they get $600,000.
Exactly.
Per turbine.
Yeah.
Which is a big incentive to put in turbines.
Yeah, and the landowner takes the liability for the turbine.
So he gets $12,000 a year, but if anything happens to it, he's got to fix it, or she's got to fix it.
Yeah, when they catch on fire,
Yeah.
they're responsible for their neighbours' properties going up in smoke. That kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And effectively that money, the subsidy that's getting paid to the wind farms, is reaming $40 billion a year out of the Australian economy. And it's paid by everyone, every pensioner, householder, schools, hospitals, everyone. It's not just out of your tax, it comes out of your power bill.
Is this why power bills are going up?
Yeah. That's why power bills.
Power bills are going up to pay for wind turbines that don't work.
Exactly.
And why don't they work?
So they don't work because, for a start, they draw power off the grid, so they have to have coal-fired power in order to turn.
And that's true, folks. Ironically, many industrial-scale wind turbines require an electric kickstart to begin turning.
They're not windmills, they're turbines. And essentially...
Sorry, what do you mean? The power to turn. So when we see them turning, that's not the wind, that's the power generator turning.
Essentially, they have to draw power off the grid. So they have to draw coal-fired power off the grid in order to turn. And what happens when the wind picks up, they do actually start to create electricity of their own. But that electricity is so intermittent and unreliable, when it gets back to the grid, it has to be balanced on the grid, which you can't do. And like with your coal-fired power station, you can't ramp your coal-fired power stations up and down. So the coal-fired power station stays at the same level because it takes 24 to 48 hours for them to get up to heat anyway, and they just let off steam as the wind comes onto the grid. So there's absolutely nothing about them that works apart from reaming that amount of money out of the Australian economy, and it's going offshore.
That money's going offshore.
Yeah, it's going
And now they're getting ready to shut down the power stations like around Traralgon.
Exactly.
So they can rely on
That's
the
why
wind.
South Australia has had so many power blackouts over the last 2 or 3 years, because as the wind has come on, you can't stabilise the grid. So the whole place has to go into blackout.
Yeah, now folks, I'm not quite sure if she was 100% correct there, as the Howard government was a long time ago. But she's right, wind farms are a complete joke. Anyway folks, I've posted all the relevant links below.